Welcome to this episode of The People Dividend. I'm your host, Mike Horn, and I am beyond excited to welcome an adult developmental psychologist to today's show, Dr. Deborah Heiser, an applied developmental psychologist, a TEDx speaker, consultant, author, founder of the Mentor Project, adjunct professor in the psychology department at the State University of New York, Old Westbury. Deborah, Dr. Heiser, has additionally authored peer review articles, is co-editor of Spiritual Assessment and Intervention with Older Adults, and a frequent expert guest for syndicated and local talk radio shows, international and local podcasts, and print and online media sources. She's been quoted in the New York Times, Seattle Times, Dallas Times, and contributes to Thrive Global. Her research covers a wide range of topics related to aging, including depression identification, dementia, and frailty, with grants awarded from NIA, the National Institute on Aging, the National Institute of Health, and Pfizer. She received an international award for her research on depression identification, as well as serving for 9 years on the board of the State Society on Aging of New York, and was president in 2008. Later in 2016, she served as president of Queens Psychological Association in New York. Welcome, Dr. Deborah Heiser. Can you say a few words about yourself to our audience?
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here. I am, as you mentioned, an applied developmental psychologist. I have pivoted, though, from looking at everything no one wants to have or get as we get older to looking at the things that we should be excited about in our midlife and beyond. So as part of that, I look at mentorship and how we give back and leave our legacy and make meaning in life.
That's not only admirable, but I'm sure for those familiar with mentoring or mentorship, it not only has personal rewards that come to the mentee and mentor, but also an organizational, a team purpose as well. And I'm looking forward to digging into those topics. But first, what is it that a psychologist of your type does?
So everyone asks that.
All right.
Um, so most people think of a clinical psychologist, and that's
Uh-huh.
somebody who's looking at pathology, things that, you may want to work on to get back on track or that, really need some addressing. So it's looking at pathology. I trained and was able to take the licensing exam in that respect. So when I say I'm an applied developmental psychologist, I do the research, but I also have been trained to work with individuals. So I look, though, and most developmental psychologists do, look at what we should expect through the lifespan. So if you think of a child developmental psychologist, they're looking at when do kids walk and talk and do those milestones. I, as someone who looks at aging, looks at the developmental milestones from midlife and older.
Yes, and so great to bring that to life because I think what it does, at least what it did for me when I was studying with Judy Stevens Long, a psychologist of the same type, is it opens up your curiosity about the possibilities in life and maybe moves us away from regrets. And it gives us a great insight into thinking about aging and midlife and mentoring and leadership. So maybe let's just start with this question and thinking about developmental psychology is what can we look forward to as we age?
Oh my gosh, so much. When I first started out as a researcher, I was studying everything no one wants to have or get, as I mentioned. And I was a complete downer at cocktail parties. No one wanted to talk to me. And it wasn't until I went to a dinner party and somebody said, and I was so thrilled with myself. I thought I was really doing such amazing work, and I couldn't wait to tell everyone all about the work I was doing on end of life and depression and frailty. And I was shocked that it fell flat when I was telling all about what I did. And someone across from me said, what do we have to look forward to?
Mm,
Because everything I was talking about scared everyone. They were like,
right.
oh my gosh, all I have to look forward to is loss. And you're just putting a band aid on everything about my future. And when that person said that to me, I was in my early 30s and I said, oh, I want to know what I have to look forward to. What I don't even, I'm only looking at these things that are pathology that aren't what we should be expecting, but this is all that's out there. So I went back to research and I was shocked to find that we have so much to look forward to. It just wasn't making it to the media. We look at life as an inverted V physically, but
Right.
our emotional trajectory, which is, when somebody says, hey, what do you want for your kids when they grow up? We say, we want them to be happy. Well, we can
Mm,
expect that. We start right from birth, like our physical trajectory, and go up and never decrease emotionally. And so that got me really excited to look at midlife and what that looks like for us and all of the developmental milestones that we can look forward to on the emotional trajectory that make us feel fulfilled and complete and like our footprint matters and all of that. So that's really, the exciting thing that I think we should all think we have bunches of doors ready to open up for us. They're not obstacles, it's all open doors.
I remember several decades ago at this point reading Mary O'Hara Devereux's book called Into the Badlands. And I don't have any relationship to her. I think about her as a futurist. And what she described in that book was the periods of two periods of midlife, sort of the period that happened maybe from 40 to 60, mid 60s, and then the mid 60s to the 80s. And I've since heard, it described by thinking about the three decades or the three chapters.
Yeah.
Um, where are we evolving in that midlife definition?
I think it's going to always continue to evolve. What's happening is the same thing that happened with children. We learn more and more, and then it starts to be that we are looking at the minutia of it. The what we're looking at is more and more narrow. So it was like the Wild West when you were talking about the people who first started looking at aging. And so
Right.
it's very broad. And now we're able to really, what you said, it went from 2 to 3.
Uh-huh.
We are going to be looking at it decade by decade in much more detailed ways so that we can really tease out some of the things that we're looking at in midlife. I mean, only just now are we looking at things like menopause. That was really left out of the table, but that takes up a good hunk of, a decade and a half for people in their midlife years and maybe even longer. We're also now just starting to learn about loneliness and social prescribing and all of these things that are being added to it. So I think it's going to just get more narrowly focused as we learn more.
Yes, I think about one of my former employers, Genentech, and Corey Davis, who's the chief people officer there, whom I hired, and they've done some very progressive work on menopause and introducing, I believe, menopause benefits. So
Mhm.
it's a way of paying attention to these issues. I think one of my pivotal moments in helping me to think about the topic of aging was probably in my 20s. And I took a course with Maggie Kuhn, who was at that time probably the pioneering head of the Gray Panthers when they were more akin to be radical or otherwise. And she taught a course on aging and what it meant to be older. And all of that leads me to a question for you, which is maybe perhaps on an unrelated topic, but certainly one we think about in the later stages of life around generativity. And what is generativity?
Oh, it's my favorite. Thank
Uh,
you for bringing that up. That hits us in midlife. And it is a stage where we are built to give back, to care for others without expecting anything in return. And this is built in the same way walking and talking is built in. So, when you're in your 30s, you think, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to be pulling everything in. Why would I want to give back? When we hit midlife, we have finished checking off all those boxes We're like, okay, I've taken enough in. Now, does any of it matter? Do I matter? If you think of the movie It's a Wonderful Life, it really shows that person and how he said, "Oh, wow, I matter to my whole community." We all have a need for that hits around midlife, and it's just the point in our lives that we have a little bit more bandwidth because we're pretty good at our jobs and what we're doing, so it doesn't require all of that cognitive, you know, load that we have when we're
Right.
first learning. But we also have learned over those decades how to navigate frustrations and other things, and how to navigate personalities and individuals. We take all of that in, and it gives us that extra room so we can say, am I relevant? Am I useful? Am I someone that, has something to give back to others? How deep is my footprint? And it's the time when we start to think of legacy and where we want that to be, and to whom we want to leave that to, and how we want to do it.
Oh no, does that explain why I write books now?
And podcasting is a form of mentorship.
I would think so, sure.
Generativity is mentoring, volunteering, and philanthropy. And
Uh-huh.
so you are what I would call a modern mentor, because you are dropping your expertise out there to whoever is meaningfully connected to your
Well,
podcast.
it's interesting. I often describe myself as coach, teacher, and mentor, and all of my work revolves around that those worlds of practice. Um, what makes a good mentor? And I think we all bring our experiences to this. I have some mentees that I've sustained relationships with, again, over decades. I've had some mentors with whom I um, developed relationships with that I would have never expected, that have lasted 3 or 4 decades. As we mentioned in our pre-show, one with Dr. Beverly Kay, an earlier guest on the podcast. So as we think about, mentoring, particularly in a world that's shifting, people maybe don't even think about organizations in the same way as certainly I have. The advance of the gig economy, the erosion of middle management. Maybe you want to start more broadly with the concept of mentoring first, but let's take it down, to something that at an organizational level.
Sure. I can first start to define it for you. So, because a lot of people have been using the term incorrectly, and it makes it feel like there could be failed mentorship. And really, mentorship is, it is or it isn't. It's not that there's like a failed mentor, there's no toxic mentor. That somebody like that just isn't a mentor.
Yeah.
So the real definition is, think of making brownies, right? If you leave an ingredient out like sugar, it'll look like it, but it's not going to taste like it.
Right.
So mentorship needs first generativity. Somebody has to want to give something back to someone. So if you're told you must do it, that probably, it has to really come from you. You want to generate something from yourself and give it to somebody who wants it. That person also has to want to receive it.
Right.
The second thing is, it needs to be intrinsically motivated. So if you're getting paid, you're not a mentor. You're something else amazing. You could be a coach, you could be an advisor, you could just be an amazing leader. But if you're getting paid, you're not a mentor. So, and I like to think of that as, if I were to say to you, hey, Mike, would you like to go volunteer your time at a soup kitchen giving out food and beverage to hungry, thirsty people? You might say, I'd like to. Sure, it makes me feel good to do that. But if I called you while you're on your way and I said, you know what, take a left and go volunteer time at Starbucks, that's going to have a very different feel. And that's how it often feels in a workplace when a person is getting paid to mentor. Um, so that it needs that intrinsic motivation. The next thing is, it needs a meaningful connection. You have to like each other. If you
Mhm.
feel like, oh, I'm going and I'm talking to my mentor, it's like time I'm putting in, or, vice versa, that's really not going to be a good mentoring relationship. It also needs to be that there's trust. So if I'm an entrepreneur and I think that you're going to come and get mentored by me and steal my idea and run off and, form your own company, that's a real problem. Likewise, if you said to me, hey, I'd like to get mentored, but you feel like if I knew your vulnerabilities, I would maybe give you a bad performance evaluation or not give you a raise. That trust, is a key component there. And finally, there should be a goal, and that can be a one-off goal, or it could be one that changes over time if you have a long-term relationship. So you really need all of these together. It often happens this way, just organically, and people are doing it. But sometimes there's one component missing, and it feels like it's off, and then people think mentoring doesn't work.
Dr. Deborah Heiser, it's so amazing to see how you're advancing this work. Particularly, our listeners can go to mentorproject.org. But I'd like to dig in with this more, and you'll find everyone will find it in the show notes today, as well as other ways to get in touch with this work. Is mentorship always intergenerational, or how do you think about that?
Oh, mentorship is anything. So, yes, it can be intergenerational. If I'm working for an ad agency, for example, and I want to see how younger people than myself, a different generation, like millennials, think about, say, iPhones, I need their expertise. I have to have that, or I'm going to sell and it's going to land flat. We see this all the time. It should always be intergenerational in the sense that if we're looking to get education from somebody in some way, that's how it is. But our biggest, most impactful mentorship is lateral mentorship.
But what is that?
So this is where our tech boom was all built on lateral mentorship. The founding of the United States, the founding fathers were all lateral mentors. Everyone was an expert in their own area. No one was the boss. So it's not hierarchical where you're trying to be pulled up the ladder. So if you're an entrepreneur, you're in tech, you're developing or designing things, likely you are engaged in lateral mentoring constantly and you just don't know it. So if I'm a hardware engineer and I say, hey, Jim, software engineer, can you help me with this? I need to develop something. That person is your mentor as they teach you and you learn how to incorporate something into what is happening. So lateral mentoring is really the force behind most of the impact that has come from the tech boom. If you look at any new thing that has happened, like one of the fathers of the firewall is Bill Cheswick, and he worked for Bell Labs, and he's one of our mentors. And he told me the story about how he came to be one of the fathers of the firewall. He was tasked with doing this. They said, you're an internet security guy, build us a firewall, make an network firewall. And he was like, oh, all right. So he starts out and he gets as far as he can go. And he says, uh-oh, I'm not going to tell my boss I don't know how to finish it. He's not going to be happy with that. So he wheelied himself in his office chair down to Steve Bellovin. And he said, Steve, I know you know how to do a different kind of, engineering than I do. Can you teach it to me and show me how to do it? Steve Bellovin got nothing out of this. Like, this didn't help him. This was Bill's job. But he said, sure, I'll help you out. And he taught him what he knew. Bill was able to incorporate that in there and birthed the network firewall. Then the two of them stayed in contact and wrote the first internet security book. But that's how it happens over and over and over again. It's natural. You go to the person that you don't feel like they're going to exploit your vulnerabilities, and someone you trust and who is intrinsically motivated because they like you, you feel meaningfully connected. And that's how it generally works. And that leads to some of our biggest innovations.
Hey, that's great. It's got me so excited about the Mentor Project. Can you describe what the Mentor Project is? And
Sure.
yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
So it started because I was curious to understand the mentor's perspective on mentorship, because I kept hearing about how people benefit from having a mentor, but it was this elusive, nameless, faceless individual. So I was talking to about 45 people who identified as mentors. And one of them was Bill. And he said, I'm going to be retiring from Bell Labs and I'm going to move to a farm and I'll have no access to mentees. I kept hearing over and over, no one had access to mentees. And I was like, are you kidding? People would pay money to meet with you and you don't have anybody to give your expertise back to. And he and everyone else was saying, I feel irrelevant. I feel like I'm not validated. I feel like I'm useless. So we started with Bill and a couple of other people to get them into schools so they could mentor just for free, just for fun, like just a little group of people doing this wonky idea. And then it was working great. Bill was having a good time. They had Ches Day on Wednesdays. It's the schools, and everybody was having a great time. And then somebody came to me and they said, no one else will ever want to do this because people who are really important don't have time to give back. And they are also aren't going to want to. And I was like, okay, so we'll be a band of 10, weirdos out there doing this whole thing. And then in 6 months, we went from 10 to 60, then to 80, then to 100 within a year of top people. We have astronauts, we have astrophysicists, 7-time Nobel nominee. We have all these people who kept calling up and saying, I want to mentor. And so we now are 5 years in, and last year we were able to give $3 million of mentorship hours to students around the world in 5 countries for free. We do this for free. And so we've really been able, it was like an anthropological expedition to see really how generativity works. And it does. It's so powerful. People love giving back. A little piece of them is in countless people around the world now. One man was able to change an entire community in Shirati, Tanzania. And so we've been able to see the enormous impact that people can make while developing a legacy for themselves.
And if our listeners go to mentorproject.org, they'll find ways to get involved or be connected or participate in some manner.
Absolutely. So you can participate through mentorship. And if you know someone who wants free mentorship from some cool mentors, it's just a click the become a mentee button, and it's free. So mentoring, volunteering, and philanthropy. So we have been operating off of all 3 of those exclusively. Our first 2 years, we operated on $547, and we were able to impact about 100,000 students around the world. I mean, it really does show how generativity works.
Well, it's just absolutely amazing and fascinating to be in conversation with Dr. Deborah Heiser. Deborah, as we think about the evolution of 2025 and this important topic of mentoring, and organizations are in a lot of stress relative to changes in employment status. What advice or guidance would you give to our HR leaders, our HR executives, moving into the remaining portions of 2025? What advice or recommendations would you give on any of the topics that we've discussed, so broad or specifically around mentoring?
I'd say to understand that your midlife and older employees, which is a big number, have this desire to be generative. And it really is so important that a company can offer that to people. It doesn't feel like it's being offered when it almost feels like an exploitation in some ways when it becomes a part of, you must do this as your job.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're able to offer it organically, and that can be, there's so many ways to do that, then a person can feel like they're relevant, valued, validated, that they're useful, and that all of those boxes that they check matter. So an HR person has so much power in the lives of everyone who's midlife and older in making that difference for them. And I guarantee that's going to make explosive impact in their work, especially if it's organic and not put down as a box that needs to get checked, or that if they get a special something or other for being a mentor. As long as they're able to let it be organic, it always works out really well.
Such a great and wise insight, and confirms my experience as a human resources executive. I often had little time for these very, well rigged, well crafted, heavily engineered mentor mentee projects based on so many variables that, it would create the perfect soup.
Yeah.
And what about, mentoring groups and mentoring teams? And I always found them as an HR leader suspect. I
Yeah.
don't think that,
They are.
at least in my experience, where the most powerful mentoring relationships arise. Maybe
Yeah.
sometimes that happens in an organizational context. I mean, maybe it happens in a hierarchical context at times, but there are so many opportunities to connect with people who are
Yeah.
interested, engaged, and excited about your particular view or your particular domain expertise that it certainly doesn't. I think the engineering makes for a lot of disappointed participants.
You're absolutely right. And I'll also say that a lot of people say, I'm a coach and a mentor. And I would like to say something that is often controversial, but a coach is often doing things that fall in line with what a mentor does, but a person needs a coach and a mentor, and they are distinctly different. One is extrinsically motivated and you have the goals of the company there. You need a coach. A coach is great. Have a coach, but you also need mentors. You should never think that you've got one and you're set. You should always be looking to get more. And so I just don't want
You open up another great topic because we think about the differences between coaching, mentoring, and also managing. And
yeah.
so much you see so much junk about managers have to be coaches in order to be effective. Doesn't mean that they shouldn't have coaching skills. Managers should have some coaching skills.
They should.
Doesn't mean that a manager can't help somebody think about professional development.
Yeah.
They should have some
That's
skills in
being
that.
a good leader.
Right.
That's what a good leader has. I tell people that all the time,
Right.
that a leader is supposed to be doing those. You're doing your job right. You don't have to give extra titles for everything that is a component of that.
No.
It's like, if I'm an advisor and I am to students, I tell them I get paid to do this.
Right.
I do it well because I care about you. That's part of my job. And that's why I'm good at this. I'm not your mentor. I am outside of the classroom if you contact me for something outside of what I do here. And leaders, if they can think of themselves as, I want to strive to have all of those components there to make me a good leader, that doesn't devalue your leadership. That just says you're pretty darn
Right.
good at what you do.
I have one additional question before we wrap up with Dr. Deborah Heiser and mentorproject.org. And I have coaches to my business. How do we market effectively? How do we develop business effectively? How do we get our message out to the world? And that happens through a lot of different mediums. And I always joke that I've had the worst mentors because they've all worked until they've died. Their
Oh,
work was their passion, and they all have worked until the last days of their lives. So I always say I've had mentors.
I think they have passion, and that probably
Uh-huh.
was what drove them to work up until the end.
I think you're right. And it's been great to hear your passion around mentoring and applied developmental psychology to understand the importance that HR leaders should pay attention to at midlife and what that means in organizations. So thank you for all of your insights, your wisdom. Do you want to talk just a moment about how people get in touch with you, perhaps?
Sure. You can reach me on LinkedIn. You can reach me I have a website, deborahheiser.com, through the Mentor Project. Just leave me a message on the contact us page. I write for Psychology Today, so you can, reach me there. And you can also reach me through the book that I wrote, The Mentorship Edge, which is available wherever you get books.
Ah, great. So many great ways to connect. And what a great resource and wonderful to be in conversation today with Dr. Deborah Heiser. And until the next episode of The People Dividend, stay well.